Gilg Jew, Gilg J as Gilg Nerach.
As showed you Claare na Gael as she mahatna say shoh shaltacha. My name is Robert Catine Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Have I heard tell of old Bobby Bob?
And you're very welcome to Claare na Gael, which I'll be presenting in two languages, in the English language as Sir Gilg, in the Manx Gaelic, Chinyan Amera, the mother tongue of Ellen Vanning, the Isle of Man. As Banach and Jurish, well, blen vai nod you, shen rer nelia no emshirach egen goed slew. Before the start of an Cherish Omajach, the foolish fortnight of the Manx Christmas, we were looking at nicknames, and we've turned to the work of A.W. Moore, which we'll finish off, and then we'll move on to the work of J J Kneen, but we'll find much of that will be familiar. Hyan Olub an Helsing, the Lortrich and Surrensach Renfield ons Tai Benrich and Early John Seward. Ach, to Renfield ninste, den allenach ommenjach borenach as de goller soel. Me so te phone allu Lortrich Mina Harker de gerdige heen. We begin with a song written by Annie Kissack, sung by Ruth KEGGIN, Vuddee Veg, and Ruth is accompanied with the beautiful sound of the harp of Rachel Hare. Tashu geisjachrish radio vanning, stashu the nation, visgol or scalia mach, wai doolish, Ellen Vanning.
Vuddee veg lianu machri, jig machasan anya gebotanani, shina borskin kona hastem vohu, shanka fodura genu gentu. Vuddee veg shin thou the lau venas bwyach te miralag thou, ten red gystillia vi filia tretowski, shula ma redmad och hiri machri. Vuddee veg bi merach brau, nach jegen chrien sus rishet heel vorach jou. Nian fenno geses mi uraya, as de chleimish de hoirish unache. Vuddee veg stiachans the liavi, saucheres blas he cadla the tavi, judai the chuden dan like she's stachian, as gau the ashens the chranya veg John.
Ruth KEGGIN and Rachel Hare and Annie Kissack's song Vuddee Veg. And this coming Friday evening, the 12th of January, from 6 o'clock, Ruth will be leading a workshop at Tie the Vey on Douglas Road in Peel. And that's including some Taizé chants, and there'll be a Taizé service later on in that evening where you can... They're very simple, very beautiful chants, quite repetitive, so they're quite easy to pick up. And Ruth will be teaching some of those in Manx for use. And then on the following morning, starting at 9:30 to noon on Saturday the 13th, Ruth will be leading a workshop again on Manx for worship and prayers and that sort of thing. Both sessions are free and all are very welcome indeed. We were looking originally at some nicknames used for people in the parish of Ballaugh between about 1860 to 1900, which were collected by Mr. J B Keig, and he made a list and wrote a foreword for it in 1933. His work was published in a booklet in 1940 with an additional preface by Charles Crane and Mark Braid. They particularly referred readers to a chapter about nicknames in J J Kneen's Personal Names of the Isle of Man, published in 1937. Well, we'll come on to JJ's work in due course. We've in fact gone back to A.W. Moore's 1890 publication, Surnames and Place Names of the Isle of Man, in which part 1 is about surnames, and to that there's an Appendix B dealing with nicknames. And Appendix B starts as an essay or overview of nicknames before A.W. Moore gives a list gleaned particularly from the parish registers. But at the end of one list of names he gives, he himself notes that they're quoted from the registers to show the usual trades engaged in. So it was saying there was John Corlett, saddler, and that sort of thing. And he himself says they perhaps hardly come under the head of nicknames. They're simple descriptions. Tan olaf van Helsing ginst an early John Seward, de wel posten gol de lortrish Mina Harker. Me chara John, te de grey. Te kort tatnias orm merskin inch, ne wel ish arach de horrents pien, ne wel ish arach de vei burrich eg ridden aglach. Ged de bien kuna eg kaitein de moor, share me saw. Tammy Cordale leis me cledden chrí dregger me de jean, non rau mi lale de liga leis a chus shoh. Share de wel Banasje Parker moeigi. Ta ridden ledden old de loer in son, as uljugin denia tail, as terwee ons imedi cheneden ons nen leien. Ach, an el steed kjarte son ben. At de begie rail rish goil arens a chus, wege chus ons trei gin ke de chane shen, strai. Maar so te Van Helsing angel de lotrish Banasje Harker as Harker. Te Quincy as art, uljum mooi, as geirt na legion benten den a kistjigen de oor. Nim korkion meheil de over, as nim a chitrich nach. Now this is the first of two songs we'll hear by Roger Bryant with the Cornwall Songwriters, and this is from a suite of songs that were composed by them about the gardens of Helsing.
Where the valley of Pentuan rolls gently to the sea, there's a little bit of heaven, and that's where we choose to be. In our own little world, in our own little world, from Goran up to Ligan, that's our own little world. We work up in the garden, and that provides our needs, so that when each crop is ended, we simply plant more seeds. In our own little world, in our own little world, from Goran up to Ligan, that's our own little world. When we need fowl or fishing, off to the woods we stray, and there's always herring waiting out in St. Austell Bay. In our own little world, in our own little world, from Goran up to Ligan, that's our own little world. And when we want to marry, we don't go far away, for the boys and maids of Mever are willing for to play. In our own little world, in our own little world, from Goran up to Ligan, that's our own little world. And when it comes to Sunday, and it's time to do good deeds, where there's temple, church and chapel to satisfy our needs. In our own little world, in our own little world, from Goran up to Ligan, that's our own little world. So let sailors go a-sailing out on the rolling sea, and let the French go fight the Germans, that's nothing to do with we. In our own little world, in our own little world. From Goran up to Ligan, that's our own little world. In our own little world, in our own little world. We keep well away from strangers in our own little world.
Although the plants came to Helsing from all over the world, the gardener's own horizon was rather more limited, but that was all to be changed by the advent of the First World War. Roger Bryant there led his song Our Own Little World, and more from Roger Bryant later on. Liorla Mina Harker and Hidla Jerafauer. Squech daw e be fegit Guinness mor tammy Jew. Lug sledden cofartius ris Jonathan ris Gleann Blaine, as fagen e de bachtel shana shartans de chushen as udsen de vier smoes gan shoil jou ulju. Morra Jew ren mi cadla dere anmach lug natulielen von J, as geder au Jonathan anmach nies she eschen van versmoche. Lore rom roos me jage mages, gerawi riw gemillish na gemila. Ach a dimre a vogel erbij mag jo'n na hager segeert de taai account. Ach na jij weg visser bij eges on shigeres chwishem nee bij hem. En dan je baag meen. Tammy sheen de renne burre eer na smoon renne mish. Renne dulju cordeel de rawe an achsje nach beiden tarnets jags en over aglach shoh. As ren be saich a jay. Ach, de smunjen. The very frail weg warm. Now, A.W. Moore continues with what still seem to be references to trades or activities. John Corlett, Pinder, and Dan Cowell, Pinner, were persons whose duty it was to put strayed cattle into the parish pound. Thomas Quiggin, runner, was the governor's messenger. Thomas Jones, officier, was a customs official. We find the following entries in the registers. Alice Evans, daughter to Robert, called the Cowboy, and Meggery Sherlows. William Carlett, son of William, vulgarly called Willie Curryquem, and William Mulray, vulgo Willie Curry. These two latter had probably to do with horses. Well, that reference to William Carlett, rather than Corlett actually here, as Willie Curry Quem, I say Quem, that third bit is spelled Q-U-E-M-B, but it certainly looks as though it means currycomb, and A.W. Moore is certainly viewing it that both these men, Willie Curry Quem, or Willie Currycomb, and Willie Curry, were grooms. And there we heard Neil Vallely on concertina and his brother Quiveen on piano, with Paul Meehan on guitar and Brian Morrissey on bowran. And that was a track entitled Gleann and phreacain, the Valley of the Crow. Some years ago, Greg Jochen organised a visit to the island by Neil and Quiveen Ballely's parents, actually, Brian and Enya, and they run the Armagh Pipers Club. They founded and they ran it, been running it for many, many years. And I think that was the time when Chanter's Tune came into the island. They came over, they played that, and it stayed because it was so popular. Siodiw stasiwn yn asiwn radio fanning, as yn sio se Claare na Gael fy sgolor sgelia mach, mer yn pyn Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
I've heard tell of owl Bobby Bob.
To Claare na Gael master imedy Claare yn radio fanning, bys fy chlas yn rys siacht yn lwg da gwlor sgelia mach yn chyrcheert, liorish brw a craman agert yn y deg radio fanning, as rai en y Claare yn sien. To Claare na Gael jint mor podcast, yes, vis vergeten nasty in de degge radio vanning, na trud en reich de podcast jou. Apple Podcasts, Amazon Audible, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, na Alexa. There's some more descriptions from the parish registers now rather than nicknames. Mary Clark, daughter to the blind fiddler. Margaret, daughter to Tallier a Killia, that is, Killia the tailor. William Corlett, vulgo Plew. This title appears in the same family for generations. It was probably originally given to a ploughman, suggests A.W. Moore. Thomas Tier, Schechter, that is, executor. This name, he says, has continued in the same family for 150 years. William Kane, flute, was doubtless a performer on that instrument. William Quaggan, jockey, who died in 1740, may have been a rider in the Isle of Man Derby, which is said to have been originated by the Earls of Derby on Lang Ness, long before the Epsom Derby was thought of. Edward Tier, vulgo Ned de Rau, that is, Ned the Smith. Stole the Gobbag, probably a fisherman, he says, and the Gobbag is the dogfish. As nish tabi kenia gurish bleb omajach, tret a fissamer de veli chit by grai moor mawunya shesha as by yiri and brow mine a NIALL ledger shen. Shenten yinu fos thou. Well, la enjach ni Jonathan inch thou ulium machon a chush. As a ral de bege arach de jinnach smunnion rishallage de ren we frail weg boshen, nim skriwsel your laam san ach kajin. Esh, me vissim neer veege machon machreish, nim jean day, lesh de chulius munnion machri screwt shees, son de sulien mina ege heen de lie. Tammy gennacht en trimshach as liag chriacht en jou chajin jew. Tammy sheen den eirtes of oste aglach ton. Raier, hai mi de lie trev an a denia en all, no inrach en de dinshet dau de yellow shen. Grauw mi gennachten se wienach, as from mi gennachten de we lend him nay, for grame arm. Now here's an old favourite from Welsh trio PLETHYN with a jaunty version of a song that's also found in a more sombre form about not returning to Wales until the footpaths are all overgrown with grass.
Ffarwel i'r picws mali a hefyd i'r bar a llaeth. Ffarwel i'r mistress hefyd, ni chefys ia lawer gwaith. Trafeiliau sy'n byd I gyd o'r bron, a thrwad a thros y môr. Bydd y glaswellt ar fy llwybrau cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl. Cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl, fy ffrind cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl. Bydd y glaswellt ar fy llwybrau cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl.
Ffarwel i'r merched mwynion, ffarwel I ddrws y plas.
Ffarwel I borth y fynwen, ffarwel i'r garreg glas.
Trafeiliau sy'n byd I gyd o'r bron, a thrwad a thros y môr. Bydd y glaswellt ar fy llwybrau cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl. Cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl, fy ffrind cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl. Bydd y glaswellt ar fy llwybrau cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl. Ffarwel I dref an ddewi, ffarwel i'r eglwys wen, ffarwel i'r clochdy uchel a'r ceiliog ar ei ben. Trafeiliau sy byd I gyd o'r bron a ffrwad a thros y môr. Bydd y glaswell ar fy llwybrau cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl. Cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl, fy ffrind cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl. Bydd y glaswell ar fy llwybrau cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl.
Ffarwel I godin fore, ffarwel I fwyd o'r moch.
Ffarwel rwyf yn ei roddi, i'r neb ar wasgod goch.
Trafeiliau sy byd I gyd o'r bron a thrwad a thros y môr. Bydd y glaswell ar fy llwybrau cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl. Cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl, fy ffrind cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl. Bydd y glaswell ar fy llwybrau cyn y delwy fi Gymru nôl.
Farewell i'r picws mali, farewell to a sort of Welsh cake, as Plethin set off round the world. Hanni mi lesmunion herish de chulju red tervei on, dieres Henk Jonathan de chorchiert ormons lunning. As te olju Jane de wel mor kraag aglach, les krona sai rosh gin square gus eri rech eniach. Ta de chulju red jintek pecher bi, din a weiste hoch kjartes te, Jane de chor tachet de NIALL bis an oor smoes on dobberen. Man a rau mi ang Olgus Whitby, foddy de berg Lucy Veen on shoh mer in nish. Chrawi jit de vei olach rish golgus a rullik der a henk me, as man a rawi vei on shen merim salai, gebechi a huel gesen na kadla. As man a rawi ang Olgus sen son ni, as ish kadla, gebech an vrouch en a strai morene. Oh, crenfe haimi riugus Whitby. Nishesh Cain Yurish. Tammy Ginders ser nubis Jinnawarm Jew. Signed out Follache by Jonathan. The last name given here is Thomas Neal, Pesson, that is, parson. Probably, he says, an itinerant preacher. Now, that's the end of the Manx names, because the remaining page of the appendix is a quotation from Blackwood's magazine for March 1842 about what A.W. Moore describes as the fancy nomenclature of a Scotch fishing village, to show how the Scotch nicknames compare with the Manx. However, we'll follow Charles Crane and Mark Braid in turning to J J Kneen's 1937 Personal Names of the Isle of Man. His section on nicknames quotes extensively from A.W. Moore's appendix, in fact, as it turns out, but he starts off. Nicknames have always been common in the Isle of Man, but unlike the greater part of Teutonic and Latin Europe, these nicknames never developed into surnames. Patronymics, that's to say names associated with the father, patronymics had too strong a hold on Celtic Ireland, Scotland and Man, and, to a lesser extent, Wales, to be easily ousted by nicknames. Well, this is a Scottish version of a well-known and well-travelled traditional song sung here by Owen Hand. He was from just outside Edinburgh. The song is I Once Loved a Lass.
Nu I loved a lass, and I loved her sae well, that I hated all others who spoke of her ill. But now for my love she's rewarded me well. She's gone to be wed to another. When I saw my young love to the church go, now a groom and bride and maiden she made a fine show. And I followed behind with a heart full of woe, for soon she'd be wed to another. When I saw my young love sit down to dine, I come out behind her and poured out the wine. And I drank tea that lassie who should have been mine, but knew she was wed to another. The men o' yon forest, they ask it o' me, how many strawberries grow in the salt sea. And I answered them back wi' a tear in my ear, how many ships sail in the forest. Now go dig me a grave and dig it so deep, and cover me over with flowers so sweet, and lay me into it to take a long sleep, and maybe in time I'll forget her. So they dug him a grave and dug it so deep, and they've covered him over with flowers so sweet, and they've laid him into it to take a long sleep, and maybe by now he's forgotten.
In hand with the title track from his 1966 album for Transatlantic, I Loved a Lass. It often happened, says J J Kneen, however, that a man was better known in his own immediate neighbourhood by his nickname than by his correct name, and the bearers of these sobriquets often acquiesced it to such an extent that they at times were in danger of forgetting their proper names. The story is told of a country club, in the register of which the names were entered in English and Manx. One evening, as the attendances were being recorded and the names read out, the name John Morrison was called. But there was no reply. Then Juan Mulwurra was given, but still there was no response. Then another of the officers got up and said, "I'll find him," and he called for Juan Oni, that's to say John the son of Oni or Anne, to which an immediate reply came from the back of the hall, "A saw, here." And ironically, of course, having referred to the importance of patronymics, Juan Oni is a matronymic, with Juan being identified in association with his mother Anne rather than his father. Son de berg verzeggen der mi Kenia der geert zijn onvare, mish, na ren riw Kenia as milje heen, as na rauw eschen riw chor arm shilje jair, jene gedunje bach vaarbache heen de moor. Nim Gael arm komme donnel, as me vim genachten Markenia, gedjin eschen fagene arach. Tammy Sheen, terwijl hij vergene lesoenen te orrenen na mrein baagde de inzige. Genodem kunjen de kaart ernaach hen kadle ormraier. Te kunjen klaasjen gonster niet doltajem na modi, as immer die feiren kwech, gurish goil paja gus moeds tar menach, vai schemer manche Renfield, bespol enjach von schemer shoh. As esch, van nieuw gienis herish de chuljunie, nieuw gienis gedouwen de dogeaal orm, as Jeremy as ich mi maag as een onjug. Sdorige as chwischkin schien voor de chuljunie, as scared doe en kjoutek en rei hollis gien de wij ledden de holjach nieuw gienach ook hien. The BBC Wireless Military Band, recorded in 1929, with the tune of Lili Burlero, though not the same version as used for the BBC World Service. Stasiwn yn asiwn to Radio Fanning as yn shoh tasiw geisiach rys Claare na Gael, besgol Chebble MP'n Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Did the other hear tell of old Bobby Bob?
Bei Jean the rau weg gleisiacha, ach the rau de chuljurid cho gramach as a sight as bes na cronna. The rau skimmeig tanna de ven ren snau eg melid bunus niau agen ach harishenair gus the tai, Jean de goil kiel as brie or I heen. Liam de rau e Jean de ren scalia mach musmunion masaw cor fawes dau. Son tre haimi riscus muljabi, hwr mi de rau gorla cadli snau haram. Va mi malairish tamiltach, chajinach e chitiam cadli de cart, masaw diri mi as yich mi mach as an unya grish. Van ge scalia mach, as nish vi fagus den tai. De dod mi fageli na lai chew nai of alla, mar de bergi snau soes gus nonjagan. Van dunje bach na surgeon of a riw, as gerne dod mi cor en vogel ve de grey, had dod mi ons ach cor en ons kommen a schieren egge, achen enjach Gian vege. Now, J J Kneen says in a couple of places that he's quoting A.W. Moore's work, as though that refers to just the odd paragraph, but in fact he's quoting him extensively, but then in places he does add something of his own. Moore described for us how some surnames in England or even amongst the Romans developed from personal descriptions, and J adds now, in Scotland we meet with a few examples of this type of surname, such as Campbell, Cameron. And in fact he invites us to look up Cameron because that appears among his list of surnames, and it turns out Cameron is from the Gaelic words which are found in Manx as cam and stroin, cam meaning crooked and stroin a nose, so Cameron means wry nose, he says, crooked nose. He doesn't include Campbell as one of his surnames, but it derives from the Gaelic cam, crooked again, and beal, mouth, so Campbell is a crooked mouth. And later J inserts this. In recent use of such appellations, try again, this is 1937 of course, in recent use of such appellations as Crow Moor, big bone, and Chas Veg, the little foot, Dunya Lear, grey man, Iliam Beg of Randy, Little William the Brandy. Perhaps he was involved in smuggling, perhaps he liked a tot of brandy, perhaps he was from Brandywell. Now here's an old song from the Manx tradition, a song about Finn as Oshin. a song noted down in 1789 by Peter Heywood from an old woman who lived near Bishop's Court, and we heard the Mollig Band singing Finn as Oisín. J J Kneen writes that most of the foregoing names are given by Moore, although he doesn't actually say that he's been quoting Moore verbatim. However, then JJ says, to which the following may be added: Tommy the Wad and Johnny the Sod. The latter, he said, is said to have swum from the Red Pier in Douglas to Conister with a sod of turf on his head. Well, presumably this was to win a bet of some sort. JJ goes on. William Crebin, the honour, he says, pale yellow. William Madrill, rye, meaning red. And Ewan Neal, an heir a ben, the white or the fair heir. So he was an heir to some estate or other, and he had white or fair hair. And he says then probably received their nicknames from the colour of their hair. Thomas Christian, mule, partook no doubt of the stubbornness of that animal. But Robert Kissack, Drake, can't be explained away so easily. The following, he says, speak for themselves. Henry Gorn, Cabach, stuttering. Anne Watterson, Era, that's the heiress. Anne Watterson, Ledger, strong. Well, actually, that's sort of a name. Calling someone Ledger or strong may mean quite the opposite, of course. It could be ironic. Esh, henk fire J Strepper, as for fissem de round the tenjeli corische. Van mi go haglet jaster en mi snuist jagsel jabi, as jaar mi een lijigen harish mechion, as hoop mi me weer ons mechlichen. Gerauw mi ege tre shen Sabina ge gorer bi, ege goed slu shen maar van mi smudjen. Ach, henk kadle arm genauris, son limme jema ma ashlischen, gen el kunjen weg, der ware, ter en Jonathan doeste mi. Liam der ouwe arm coreb as kiaull purt de grey ons coren volva mi on, as den Jonathan va chroma harm. Svi chwech van ashlishem, as svi bunnes mor sampler mai jenach te smunjen tre doucht, chit de ve mestit lesh na de gul ons ashlishen. Smunny mi der ouwe mi mechadle, as furcht den Jonathan de hit back. Van mi fear him neach mechonegge, as van mi gin jaar de yellow weg. Well, now more from Roger Bryant and the Lost Gardens of Helsing, referencing the strength this time of the Methodist Chapel and the importance of that in a song called The Gardens of Life.
God in his wisdom decided that we should be born in the garden, and there we would be, given the fruits and the flowers of the tree, as we wander through the gardens of life. Sing his praise all your days, for he'll be your comfort in so many ways. Let him keep you and feed you through the battle and strife, as we meet on our journey through the gardens of life. As children we were left in the garden to grow, in the love of our God, his goodness to know, as he watched over us in his kingdom below, as we wander through the gardens of life. Sing his praise all your days, for he'll give you comfort in so many ways. Let him keep you and feed you through the battle and strife, as we meet on our journey through the gardens of life. Then as we grew up, temptations to find, when we strayed from the path and our vision grew blind, he would lead us once more back to caring and kind, as we wander through the gardens of life. Sing his praise all your days, for he'll give you comfort in so many ways. Let him keep you and feed you through the the battle and strife, as we meet on our journey through the gardens of life. Though the battle was fierce and so many would die, and some have been called for to serve him on high, we shall all share the glory in the sweet by and by, as we wander through the gardens of life. Sing his praise all your days, for he'll give you comfort in so many ways. Let it keep you and feed you through the battle and strife, as we meet on our journey through the gardens of life. Sing his praise all your days, for he'll give you comfort in so many ways. Let him keep you and feed you through the battle and strife, as we meet on our journey through the gardens of life.
Roger Bryant and his song The Gardens of Life. Vertrimmed na lai me chaden, as me lauen, as me inchen, nach dod weg gullig a viewed KEGGIN. As mersor en mi kadle den jou eishach as smunny me. Eish gawe toiach der chittou, the rauw an trom, as tash, as foor. Now we finish off this particular paragraph of names that J J Kneen has added to those collected by A.W. Moore. Richard Carron, honest. John Taylor, brave. John Gaughan, beg, little. John Madrill, supple. Henry Watterson, strong. And Thomas Cubban, veen, meaning dear. Again, these could well fall into the category of being given ironically. And we'll see what else J J Kneen added to A.W. Moore next time. Siananish, stand by for Chris Pearson with 2 hours of the best chill-out music for your Sunday evening from 7 to 9, and then at 9, Judith Clay will be here to present Sundown. We close with a testimonial, well, in fact a medley called The Testimonial, performed by international band, that's from Scotland, Canada and Ireland, the Outside Track. Cartnish chanodmudjach corcion Claare Gael here show. And so until the next time then, this is Robert Cutting Carswell, Robert a Carslach.
Oh, Bobby Bob.
Wishing you a very good night. Eve, I'm a Crieri, was Orcherier, as my Yerian shared you, will you?